There's a moment in every person's life when they stand at a crossroads. One path is familiar, comfortable, safe, lined with excuses and tomorrow's promises. The other path, unknown, difficult, demanding every ounce of strength you didn't know you had. This is the story of a man who chose the harder path, not because he was special, not because he was born different, but because one night in the darkness of his apartment, he made a decision that changed everything. His name was Marcus, 34 years old, 287 pounds, software developer, single, alone, and tonight he was done lying to himself. Marcus lived the life most people live. The alarm went off at 7:30. He hit snooze, then again, and again. By the time he dragged himself out of bed at 8:15, he was already behind, already breaking the first promise of the day. But that was normal. That was life. His days blurred together like smudged paint, sitting in traffic, sitting at a desk, sitting on a couch. The highlight of his day was choosing between Chinese takeout or pizza delivery. He told himself he was tired. He told himself he'd start eating better next week. He told himself a lot of things. He'd tried before. Of course he had. New Year's resolutions that evaporated by January 4th. Gym memberships that cost him $40 a month to feel guilty about. Diet plans abandoned the moment stress showed up. And with each failure, something inside him hardened. Not determination, but resignation. The quiet acceptance that maybe he just wasn't built for change. The old photos haunted him, not because of how he looked then, but because of who he was. Someone who finished what he started. Someone who kept his word. Someone who believed impossible things were just difficult things he hadn't done yet. Where did that person go? When did he stop being him? March 3rd, 11:47 p.m. Marcus was doing what he did every night, scrolling through other people's lives, watching from the sidelines. And then he saw it. A video of Jake Wilson, a guy he went to high school with, crossing a marathon finish line, arms raised, medal around his neck, tears streaming down his face. The comments were full of congratulations, but one stood out. Someone wrote, "I remember when you could barely run a mile without stopping. Look at you now. Proof that anyone can change if they really want it." Look at you now. Those 4 words hit Marcus like a freight train, because Jake wasn't naturally athletic. Marcus remembered him in gym class, always picked last, always struggling. But somewhere along the way, Jake had decided to change, and he did. Marcus sat in the darkness of his apartment and asked himself a question he'd been avoiding for years. What if I could? What if I actually could become someone different? Not by wishing, not by planning, but by doing the one thing I've never truly done, committing completely. No backup plans, no escape routes, all in. He looked at himself in that mirror, really looked maybe for the first time in years, and he saw something he didn't expect. Not disgust, not shame, but possibility. The faint outline of the person he could become if he finally kept his promises. 34 years old. If not now, when? Next year, 5 years from now, 10. What if someday never comes? What if this is it? The last chance to prove to himself that he's capable of hard things. That night, Marcus went to bed different than he'd woken up. He hadn't lost any weight, hadn't run a single mile, hadn't changed anything visible, but something invisible had shifted. He'd stopped hopping to change and started deciding to change. And that distinction makes all the difference in the world. 5 a.m., the moment of truth. Between the sound of that alarm and the decision in the next 5 seconds, entire lives are written. This is where dreams come to die, not in the grand gestures, but in the quiet surrender to 5 more minutes of sleep. Marcus's hand reached for the phone. For a moment, it hovered over the snooze button. His body begged for it. His mind whispered 1,000 reasonable excuses. You barely slept. You'll be exhausted at work. Start tomorrow. One more day won't matter. But Marcus remembered something. Every tomorrow he'd promised himself for 10 years had never come. Tomorrow was a lie. Tomorrow was a thief stealing his life one day at a time. There was only now, only this moment, only this choice. His feet hit the cold floor. 287 pounds of momentum standing up. He didn't feel motivated. He didn't feel inspired. He felt tired, sore from sleeping wrong, and every cell in his body screamed to crawl back into bed. But motivation is a feeling. Discipline is a choice. And Marcus had decided, not just to work out today, but to become the kind of person who keeps promises to himself. That was the real goal. The weight loss would be a side effect. The walk to the 24-hour gym felt longer than it was. Every step was a negotiation with doubt. Turn back. It's too cold. You'll go tomorrow. But Marcus kept walking, one foot in front of the other, discipline over doubt. The gym was empty. Good. No witnesses to what came next. No audience for his struggle with things that should be easy. Just him, a treadmill, and 30 minutes he'd promised himself. 2.8 miles per hour. Barely faster than a casual stroll. But for someone who'd spent the last decade sitting, it might as well have been a dead sprint. 3 minutes in, his lungs started burning. 5 minutes, his legs felt heavy. 8 minutes, sweat dripping despite the slow pace. His body was confused, shocked by this sudden demand for movement. But Marcus kept walking. 15 minutes, halfway, and here came the voice. The same voice that had talked him out of change 100 times before. You've done enough. 15 minutes is good for day one. No one would blame you for stopping. You can do 30 minutes tomorrow. His hand hovered over the stop button. This was the moment. Not the moment he succeeded, but the moment he chose to continue when every fiber of his being screamed quit. This is where champions are forged, not in comfort, but in the space between wanting to quit and choosing to stay. Marcus pulled his hand back. He'd said 30 minutes. 29 wouldn't count, not because anyone was watching, but because he was watching. He was the audience that mattered. 28 minutes, 29, his vision blurred with sweat, his breath came in gasps, and then 30 minutes, exactly. Not a second more than he needed to, but not a second less than he'd promised. Marcus stood there, hands gripping the treadmill rails, gasping for air, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not in the distance, not in the speed, but in the fact that he'd made a promise to himself and kept it. For the first time in 10 years, he'd done exactly what he said he would do. Day 1, complete. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, but more importantly, it continues with the second step, and the third, and the 400th. That's what Marcus was about to learn. Day 2, if day 1 runs on decision, day 2 runs on discipline, because everything hurt. His legs burned. His back ached. His body sent every signal it could. Stay in bed, you've earned rest, take a day off. Marcus moved like he'd aged 40 years overnight. Every muscle screamed its protest. But he stood up, put on the same workout clothes, filled the same water bottle, walked the same dark streets. Same treadmill, same 30 minutes, same 2.8 miles per hour. It wasn't easier. If anything, it was harder, but he showed up. Day 3, the alarm went off and something interesting happened. Marcus didn't hesitate, didn't negotiate, just turned it off and got up. Not because the pain was gone, it wasn't, but because the decision had already been made. He wasn't deciding whether to work out. He was just executing a plan that was already in motion. Day 4 brought rain. Heavy, cold March rain. The kind that gives you permission to skip things. Marcus looked out the window at the downpour, looked at his gym bag, and for just a moment, the old version of himself suggested staying home. But the new Marcus, the one being born in these early morning hours, knew something the old one didn't. The rain doesn't care about your goals. The cold doesn't negotiate with your dreams. Weather is just weather. Discipline doesn't have conditions. He arrived soaked, water dripping from his jacket, and got on the treadmill anyway. 30 minutes, no matter what. Day 5, disaster. Marcus slept through his alarm. The ringing eventually stopped. When his eyes finally opened, the clock read 5:17. He'd failed. Panic set in. The old pattern was trying to reassert itself. This is where it all falls apart. You missed your time. You broke the streak. Might as well start over Monday. The voices of failure are always loudest right after a mistake. But here's what Marcus understood that most people don't. Discipline isn't perfection. It's resilience. It's not about never falling, it's about what you do after you fall. Do you stay down, or do you get back up? Marcus got to the gym at 5:42. He only had time for 25 minutes if he wanted to make it to work on time. 25 wasn't 30, but 25 after sleeping through your alarm beats 0 by staying in bed. Progress, not perfection. Day 6, day 7. The routine was setting in like concrete. Wake up, show up, do the work. The discipline at 5 a.m. started bleeding into other hours. If he could wake up early, he could meal prep on Sundays. If he could walk when his body begged him to stop, he could say no to office donuts. Every promise kept made the next promise easier to keep. Every instance of discipline strengthened the discipline muscle. Character isn't built in a day, it's built in 7 days. Then 7 more. Then 7 more after that. 1 week complete. 7 promises kept. The scale showed 5 pounds lost, but the real weight lifted was invisible. The weight of broken promises, the burden of being someone who quits, that was the real transformation. Week 3, the valley. Every transformation has one, that dark period where the excitement fades and reality sets in. The scale hadn't moved in a week. Still 282 pounds. 3 weeks of 5 a.m. wake-ups. 3 weeks of saying no to comfort. 3 weeks of discipline. For what? 5 pounds. This is where the doubt comes roaring back. Not as a whisper anymore, but as a scream. You're wasting your time. Look at the numbers. 3 weeks for 5 pounds. At this rate, it'll take you 2 years to reach your goal. 2 years of suffering. And for what? To still be mediocre. At work, the comments started. The knowing looks. The barely concealed smirks. His coworkers had seen this before Marcus on another fitness kick. They gave it another week, maybe 2. Everyone loves watching someone try and fail. It confirms their own decision not to try at all. Even his mother called with concern masquerading as care. Maybe he was pushing too hard. Maybe he should take it slower. Maybe he wasn't built for this. She didn't say that last part, but Marcus heard it anyway. The unspoken belief that some people are meant to change and others aren't. That night, Marcus sat in his apartment with the full weight of doubt pressing down on him. The scale wasn't lying, progress had stalled. His body still hurt every morning. People were watching and waiting for him to fail. And the voice in his head, the one that sounded suspiciously like his own, asked the question he'd been avoiding. What if they're right? What if, after all this effort, he was still just Marcus? Still just the guy who tries and quits? Still just someone playing at change without actually changing? He picked up his phone, scrolled to his before photos. His finger hovered over the delete button. It would be so easy. Delete the evidence. Stop the experiment. Go back to the life where at least the pain was familiar. But then he opened his journal. Read his own words from day 1. Words written by a version of himself that believed change was possible. That version was 3 weeks younger but somehow wiser. That version knew the scale would lie, knew people would doubt, knew it would hurt, and chose to begin anyway. And in that moment, Marcus understood something that would change everything. The scale wasn't measuring the right thing. 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 50 pounds, those were symptoms. The real transformation was invisible. It was the fact that he'd shown up 21 days in a row, 21 promises kept, 21 victories over the version of himself that wanted to quit. Week 3 wasn't where his transformation stalled. Week 3 was where it was tested. And tests don't measure what you know. They measure who you are when knowing isn't enough. The next morning, Marcus's eyes opened at 4:58, 2 minutes before his alarm. His body had learned the rhythm. Discipline was becoming identity. He didn't hit snooze, didn't negotiate, just got up and went. Because that's what he did now. That's who he was becoming. Day 22, 23, 24. The doubt got quieter, not because it left, but because Marcus stopped giving it attention. Doubt doesn't die, you just learn to walk right past it. Month 2, the speed increased. Not because Marcus decided to push harder, but because his body adapted. 3.5 miles per hour felt like 2.8 used to feel, so he pushed it to 4, then 4.5. The body is designed to adapt. You just have to give it time and consistency. He started adding jogging intervals. 30 seconds of jogging, 90 seconds of walking. It was clumsy, awkward. His breathing was all wrong, but he did it, day after day. Those intervals got longer. 30 seconds became 45. 45 became 60. The discipline at 5 a.m. infected the rest of his life like a benevolent virus. He started reading about nutrition. Not diets, anyone can follow rules. He wanted to understand. To know why his body needed protein, how carbohydrates worked, what actually mattered beyond the latest trend. His evening routine became as disciplined as his mornings. Meal prep for the next day. Gym clothes laid out. Journal entry reflecting on what went well and what could improve. Lights out by 9:30 because 5 a.m. requires discipline at both ends of the day. And then, like water breaking through a dam, the weight started dropping. Not slowly, but steadily. 2 pounds a week, 3 some weeks. The plateau had broken. His body, confused for those first weeks, finally understood the new normal. Month 3 brought visible changes. His face looked different. His clothes hung loose. Coworkers stopped smirking and started asking questions. Not mocking questions, genuine ones. How did you do it? What's your secret? Can you help me? And Marcus would smile, because he knew the secret wasn't secret at all. Most people just don't want to hear it. There's no hack, no shortcut, no 30-day miracle, just the relentless, monotonous, beautiful act of showing up, day after day, week after week, month after month. The 5 a.m. alarm wasn't painful anymore. It was a summons, a reminder, a promise kept before the day even began. His body woke up before it sometimes. Ready, eager even. This was who he was now. 90 days in, Marcus jogged for 30 minutes straight. No walking breaks. 5.5 miles per hour. Nothing impressive to a runner. Everything to someone who 3 months ago couldn't walk for 30 minutes without gasping. 30 pounds lost. But more importantly, 90 promises kept. 90 mornings he could have quit and didn't. That's 90 pieces of evidence that he was someone who finished what he started. Month 6, 180 days. Marcus didn't use the treadmill anymore. He ran outside now, 3 miles, 4 on good days. The same streets he used to drive, too tired to walk. Now he ran them. He joined the club he didn't know existed. The 5 a.m. people, the sunrise runners, the disciplined, they'd nod to each other in passing. No words needed. They understood. They'd all fought the same battle, made the same choice. His old clothes didn't fit anymore. He kept one shirt, the biggest one, size XXL, not as punishment, as a reminder of where he'd been, of what discipline could do, of who he'd chosen to become. 50 pounds lost. But Marcus barely checked the scale anymore. That's not what mattered. What mattered was this: he'd made a promise 6 months ago, and he'd kept it, every single day. Friends who hadn't seen him in months didn't recognize him at first. Not because of the weight, though that was obvious, but because he carried himself differently. Shoulders back, head up, the posture of someone who keeps promises to himself. At work, the comments changed, from "still at it" to "teach me." From skepticism to respect. People wanted to know his secret, his program, his diet, his supplements. And Marcus would tell them the truth nobody wants to hear. There is no secret, no magic pill, no hack, just a decision. One decision made once, followed by 6 months of following through. That's it. That's the whole secret. Most people didn't like that answer. They wanted something easier, something they could buy, something that didn't require them to change who they were at their core. So they'd nod politely and keep looking for the shortcut. And Marcus would let them, because he understood now. You can't give someone discipline, they have to choose it. His morning routine was effortless now, not because it was easy, but because it was automatic. Identity. He didn't think about whether to work out. He wasn't the kind of person who debated it. He was the kind of person who ran, period. The decision had been made 6 months ago. Now he just lived it. He ran in the rain, in the cold, in the heat, because weather is just weather, and discipline doesn't negotiate with circumstances. Every night he wrote in his journal, not about weight, not about miles, but about promises. Every day he kept his word was another brick in the foundation of who he was becoming. 6 months of bricks built a castle. 1 year, 365 days, 365 promises kept. And Marcus stood at the starting line of the same marathon where this all began. The one he'd watched Jake Wilson complete on a computer screen a year ago. 26.2 miles. A year ago, he couldn't walk for 30 minutes. Now he was about to attempt to run for 4 hours straight, not because he had to, not to prove anything to anyone, but because the person he was a year ago wouldn't believe this was possible, and he owed it to that person to prove him wrong. The gun fired. Thousands of runners surged forward. Marcus started slow, controlled. He'd learned patience, learned that the race isn't won in the first mile. It's won in the miles where you want to quit but don't. Mile 5 felt good. Mile 10 was hard. Mile 13, the halfway point, brought doubt back. Not the screaming doubt of month 3, but a whisper. You've done enough, you could stop. No one would blame you. But Marcus knew that voice now, knew it was lying, knew it was just his comfort trying to reclaim territory it had lost. He ran past it, literally, left it behind somewhere around mile 14. Mile 18 hurt. Mile 20 felt impossible. His legs were screaming, his lungs burning. Every part of his body begging him to walk, just for a minute. No one would know. But he would know, and that's what mattered. Not the time, not the place, but whether he could look himself in the mirror tonight and say, I gave everything I had. Mile 25, 0.2 miles to go, he could see the finish line, could hear the crowd, could feel something rising in his chest, not pain but triumph, not relief but pride. He was going to finish. Not might, not hopefully, was. And then he crossed, arms raised, tears streaming, not from pain, though there was plenty of that, but from the overwhelming realization of what he'd just done. Not the marathon, the year, the 365 days of choosing discipline over doubt. He sat there, wrapped in a foil blanket, holding a medal that cost 26.2 miles. But he'd paid for it over 365 days. 365 mornings of choosing who he wanted to be. The man who crossed that finish line was not the same man who set an alarm a year ago, not because of the 85 pounds he'd lost, but because of the promises he'd kept, because of the discipline he'd chosen, because of the doubt he'd defeated, not once, but 365 times. This is the story of Marcus Chen, but it's not really about Marcus. It's about a choice every single one of us faces every single morning, the choice between who we are and who we could become. Your 5 a.m. is waiting. Maybe it's not about running. Maybe it's about building your business, learning a skill, healing a relationship, writing your book, starting your art. But whatever it is, whatever dream you've deferred to someday, that alarm is going to ring tomorrow morning, and you'll have 5 seconds to decide. Will you hit snooze? Will you make another promise you won't keep? Will you choose doubt one more time? Or will you choose discipline? Will you choose to become the kind of person who keeps their word, especially to themselves? Discipline isn't punishment. It's not deprivation or suffering. Discipline is love. It's loving yourself enough to honor your promises. It's respecting your future self more than you comfort your present self. It's the bridge between the life you have and the life you want. Marcus chose discipline over doubt, not once, but 365 times. One choice made once followed through forever. That's the secret. That's the whole secret. Tomorrow morning, your alarm will ring. You'll have 5 seconds. 5 seconds to choose between the comfortable lie of tomorrow and the uncomfortable truth of today. 5 seconds to choose between the person you are and the person you could become. He chose discipline. What will you choose? Your transformation is waiting. It's not waiting for motivation. It's not waiting for the perfect moment. It's not waiting for tomorrow. It's waiting for a decision. Make it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it inspiring, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Your support helps this channel grow and brings you more motivating stories and powerful content. Stay inspired, stay focused, and I'll see you in the next one.